Hi guys, let's look at a free guide on movers transport system that is for last year's KCSE project. This guide is very important in that once you go through it, you'll have to see how a project is tackled, how we break down the tables, queries, reports, and forms. So guys, we have the tables. The tables created are well made, whereby they mainly used to store records for the database. In this section, we reached all the tables we need to have. That is it, complete and answered. That is movers system management. That is a mover transport management system. Therefore, in last year's KCSE project, these are some of the many tables, actually the main tables that every student or any student would have come up with. We had the farmers table. Therefore, this is the primary table containing details of all registered farmers with the company, both large and small scale farmers. Then we have the orders table. This table keeps all the orders made by the farmers and also accounts for every payment, invoices, as well as planned trip deliveries. On the other hand, we have the employees table. This table keeps all employees' data, that is both the driver and loaders with the company. Also, we have the tasks table. This table links loaders to the task they have been assigned to load a specific vehicle. On the other hand, we have offenses table. This table keeps a record of all offenses committed by a driver in each trip. We have the revenue table. This table accumulates all major totals needed to derive true company profit. On the other hand, guys, we have the vehicles table, a very important table. This table keeps a record of all registered vehicles used within the company. Also, it is crucial to have the trips table. This table accounts for all planned deliveries to be made by company for the paying farmers. Then we also have the groups table. This is table that involves registered, that is to register or registered small scale farmers. Remember, small scale farmers, as per the question paper, it was supposed to be of small scale farmers. Guys, once you deduce or come up with the tables, the next step is to come up with the queries. And this is where most of the calculations are carried out in order to answer the needed objectives as required by the question paper. Below are queries that present within the database. So guys, we have the driver's query. This query calculates each driver's payment per trip made. The query links to the following tables. For you to come up with the driver's query, you are supposed to have the trip table, that is vehicles table and employees table. Those ones are in red. Then we have the expenses each vehicle query, or expenses incurred by each vehicle. This query outlines each vehicle by the expenses incurred by the trip they made or they make. Hence, each trip expense is accounted for here. The query is linked to the following tables. We have the vehicles table and trips table. Then we have farmer by group query. This query links to each farmer to their respective group, hence compares all small-scale farmers by the group they are in. The following tables are linked to query. We have the group table and the farmers table. Therefore, here, guys, we use relationships to accomplish that. Then we have goods transported query. This query lists all the ordered goods that were delivered, hence considered as successful deliveries made. The query is linked to the following tables: orders table and trips table. Large scale farmers query. This is query that simply displays all farmers who are large scale farmer. This simple select query is linked to another query. Therefore, it becomes a query of queries, registered members query. Then the RODA payments query. This query subtotals each RODA's general total payment from the tasks handled overall. This query is linked to another query called tasks payment query. Also, that one qualifies to be a query of queries. Then guys, we have loading fee query. This query calculates the approximate RODA fee to be assigned to each vehicle by specific trip made. Hence, each trip made gets a RODA's fee already applied against the vehicle used. The following tables were used. We have the trips table and vehicles table. Then lastly here guys, we have the RODAs and drivers query. This query displays the full list of all the queries, employees, namely the drivers and RODAs. It is generated from employees table. So guys, you can see that once you are creating a project, you narrow down to tables, you identify all possible tables, then those tables will assist you in a greater way to come up with the queries. And remember, the queries are the heartbeats of any database in the world. Without queries, you cannot be in a position to continue coming up with a better database. So guys, we have part 2 of the queries. This is where most of the calculations are carried out in order to answer the needed objectives as required by the question paper. Therefore, this part here we had the queries part 1, and therefore here we have a better narrow down. Remember, we usually have normalization where we go down, narrowing down the database queries so that we can avoid data redundancy. So guys, we have the registered member query. This is a simple query that lists all details of all the registered farmers as members. The query is generated from the farmers table. On the other hand, we have now the offenses committed query. Don't forget, we shall have offenses by month query. You see now we have narrowed down. This query lists all the offenses committed as well as noting the type of offense and keeping track of suspension date given. It is directly generated from offenses table. Then guys, we have offenses by months query. This query calculates all the offenses committed by specifically states on which the offense was committed. It is generated from the offenses committed query. Then we have the order for transport query. This query specifies the orders that have been paid for before the delivery is made, like a tabled invoice. This query is generated from the orders table. Then we have the offenses count monthly query. This is a heavy query whereby it calculates how many times the offender committed an offense within a month and also warrants a warning letter. If offense was committed more than 3 times, it is linked to the following specific database objects. Number 1, we have the employee table, offenses by month query, and drivers only query. Then we have now the offenses warning letter query. This query contains details of all offenders who were given a warning letter and calculates when they are due to be back on the job after the suspension was given. It is linked to the following queries: offenses committed query and offenses count monthly. Then the drivers only query, you can see we have mentioned it on the offenses count monthly query up there. So drivers only query, this query is simple as it contains all the details of company's drivers. It is generated from the table called employees table. Then we have now offenses termination query. This query calculates all drivers to be terminated based upon the time frame given by suspensions made. It is linked to queries offenses committed query and offenses count monthly. Then Rust 3 we also Rust 3 we had this one here on part 2. So guys, there is more scrutiny as we go down, as we narrow down this we refer it as normalization in advanced databases. So this is where most of the calculations are carried out in order to answer the needed objectives. Remember, that is the purpose of queries. Therefore, we have revenue allocation query. This query calculates the tax amount applied and the company's profit after necessary deductions are made. It is generated from the revenue table. It is generated from the revenue table. Then we have the total loading fee query. This query aggregates total loading fees. It is generated from loading fee query. Then we have the task payment query. This is where each loader's payment is calculated, whereby each task taken is accounted for by the loader, assigned for the fee stroke payment to be acted upon. It is linked to 3 tables, namely task table, trips table, and vehicles table. Then you can see we have now the total revenue by vehicle query. This query aggregates the total revenue earned from trips stroke deliveries made by each vehicle owned by the company. It is generated from trip cost query. Then guys, we have now the total driver salaries query. This is the query that aggregates total overall driver salaries payment made by the company. It is generated from drivers payments query. Then total now revenue query. This query aggregates the total overall revenue from all vehicles owned by the company. It is generated from total revenue by vehicle query. That is in the previous page. Then we also have the total expenses from trip query. This query aggregates total overall vehicle expenses incurred by the trips made by the company. It is generated from vehicle expenses total query. Therefore, once you have this document, you can keep on referring to the previous page. Then we have this query calculates the cost of each delivery made. This is the trip cost query. This is calculated by having the orders specified by the vehicle assigned in order to calculate the cost stroke fee applied. It is linked by the following set of tables: orders table, trips table, and vehicle table. Guys, once you go to scrutinize a query, always go back to the previous query so that you can see how that one has been accomplished. Then we go ahead with normalization, going deeper and deeper, analyzing the queries. So we have the trip details query. This query sums up the details of each trip made by specifying the vehicle used and the driver that is assigned. It is linked or generated by the following tables: orders table, vehicles table, and employees table. Then vehicle expenses total query. This query aggregates total expenses incurred by each vehicle owned by the company. It is linked by the following tables: trips table and vehicles table. Then we go ahead, we have now trips by driver and loaders query. This is also another heavy query as it is expansive, as it generally entails to list complete details of all trips by also mentioning all the drivers and loaders who were assigned, as well as the type of vehicle used for transportation. The query is linked by the following tables: trip table, vehicles table, tasks table, and employees table. Then now we have the vehicle query. This query lists all the vehicles owned by the company. The query is generated from vehicles table. Then we have the general total query. This query contains all the needed totals across various linked queries. It shows general total across the following queries. It is linked to total expenses from trips query, total driver salaries query, total loading fee query, and total revenue query. So guys, if you are very keen, you realize that as we go down, the database is becoming more precise. And for that case, it will be in a position to generate a very perfect database. Then guys, we have the GUIs or the forms. Remember the database objects. We start with the tables, we go to queries, forms, reports, and then the miscellaneous like macros, modules, etc. So guys, forms. The forms are basically the user interface or UI for the user to input data. They should be simple and navigable across other forms seamlessly. Below are forms that are present within the database. Number one, we have the employees form. Employees form, this form enters all employee details needed. It is generated from the employees table. Then you can see we have the task form. This form enters all tasks details needed. It has a subform for entering loaders details too. It is generated from the trips table and tasks table. We have farmers form. This form enters all the farmers details needed. It is generated from the farmers table. Then we have the vehicles form. This form enters all vehicles details needed. It is generated from the vehicles table. So guys, we have the offenses form. This form enters all the offense details needed. It has a subform for entering offense details. It is generated from the employees table and offenses table. Revenue form. This form is very important as whereby it accumulates various totals entered from the company compiled total report, which will help in the creation of the revenue allocation query and eventually generate the revenue allocation report. The form was originally generated from revenue table. We go ahead, we have the orders form. This form enters all the order details are needed. It is generated from the orders table. Then we have the forms part 2. We have the startup form. The startup form here is very crucial here. It's linked to the main form. So guys, this form was originally created from a blank form. That's very important to note. It serves as the splash screen or splash form, welcome screen for the database. Basically, the first form that loads in the main into the main form, or it loads before the dashboard loads or the switchboard or the main form. Therefore, the next one should be that is the main menu form. This form was also created originally from a blank form and loads immediately after the startup form and contains command buttons that open various reports and forms listed on it. It serves well as main dashboard or control center for the general database. Then we have this one coding used on startup form or macro event. Therefore, these are some of the code. We usually put them on the property sheet. You go to event. Then on timer, we have an embedded macro time interval 5,000 milliseconds. Then the macro procedure set as shown below. You open the form. Therefore, you go to the form name. You choose main form. View, you choose form. Window mode normal, or in short, you just leave it the way they are apart from the form name. Then cross window macro object type, you choose form, and then which form should be crossed at that juncture, object name startup form. So then we go to the reports, guys. Reports or summaries. The report should be readable and well detailed. In this section, we look at the were auto-generated reports. They serve as output means to display the data needed. Most of the objectives required in the paper are seen here. So the first form here is company compiled total report. This report shows all general totals of various areas. It is generated from general totals query. Then we have the transported goods report. This report shows all transported goods details. It is generated from goods transported query. Then we have driver's salary report. This report shows each driver's total salaries paid. It is generated from driver's salaries query. Trips by drivers and roaders report. This report shows details of drivers and roaders in each trip. It is generated from trips by drivers and roaders query. Perfect. So guys, you can agree with me that when you are creating a perfect database, you must start with the queries. Your queries must be perfect so that you can generate perfect reports. Then we have large-scale farmers report. This report shows all large-scale farmers. It is generated from large-scale farmers query. Revenue allocation report. This report shows revenue allocation details. It is generated from revenue allocation query. Then we have loaders and drivers report. This report shows all loaders and drivers details. It is generated from loaders and drivers query. Offenses count monthly report. This report shows suspended offenders and number of times one committed an offense monthly. It is then generated from offenses count monthly query. Then we have farmers by group report. This report shows farmers by their respective groups. It is generated from farmers by group query. Then we have offenses warning letter report. This report shows charged offenders who have been served already pending termination if they qualify for it. It is generated from offenses warning letter. So guys, you can see that movers transport system, just like any other project which is given 7 months, you can now see why it should be taken within 7 months or even more. So that once you have to come up with a database that is perfect, then you must follow some of those, actually all of those steps highlighted above. So movers transport system. Hello there. Thank you for going through this well planned and set guide. Thanks to those who purchased the 35 flowcharts and context diagrams packaged, as it gave me the ability to compose this guide fully. If you didn't, you can still make a purchase. It's not too late. It will help in funding for free video tutorials on 1080 pixels on the same. So the only problem is time. Otherwise, do support the purchase or simply head to my YouTube channel called Kyle254, where I offer database project tutorials for free. Don't forget to subscribe and share, as well as linking some videos. Otherwise, be blessed and have a happy new year.